Leafyishere is a name that most of you will already know. He's someone who was at one point a pioneer in the commentary genre, someone who played a major role in many big dramas over the past few years, and someone who was famously deplatformed from YouTube on the 21st of August 2020. This deplatforming was the first of many, and was the catalyst that led to the unsurprising demise of Leafyishere.
And I know you're gonna say, oh, well, it was at this point in time, but it's hard for me to believe that, okay, you just admitted that you called both of us like pussies in a Skype call with fucking,
I did not call you a pussy.
As you can probably tell, I can hardly contain myself right now, because today is the day we get to bully Leafy.
Stupid, honestly, that we've all gone this long giving these channels a pass, who are cancerous.
Leafy's beginnings were as humble as it gets. He started his channel on the 7th of October 2011, where he would upload Minecraft content, allowing him to gain up to 18,000 subscribers.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Sonic Adventure Team fucking Goku motherfucking...
This went on until sometime between April and July of 2014, where he would pivot his content, briefly switching to making CSGO videos, but would go on to pivot again, making what at the time would be considered rants on a range of differing topics. He would go on to gain over 200,000 subscribers in a year off this content alone, quickly amassing his empire of cancer. But this wasn't enough for Leafy. He needed more, so he went forward making storytime commentaries that would go on to push him even further into YouTube's stratosphere. This is when Leafy would take a leap of faith, but would not only change his life, but the state of YouTube itself forever.
2 to the 1 to the 3. I like good pussy and I like good trees.
Reaction commentary, also known as the cancer of YouTube, is what Leafy is mainly known for. In these reaction commentary videos, the infamous Calvin and his crimson chin would insult, mock, and somewhat criticizing the low-hanging fruit in the YouTube community. These reaction videos were admittedly quite funny for the time.
I just started biting it, but yeah, don't worry if I'm ever intimate with you, I'm not gonna start eating you. Maybe just gentle nibbling, and that's it, okay.
Yeah, it's no big deal. I'm just gonna gently nibble on you like you're a piece of fucking beef jerky.
Okay.
No, not okay, Mr. John Sakars.
And it was nice seeing an up-and-coming creator trying out something new that, as we all know, would go on to become one of the biggest subgenres in the commentary community. Leafy would go from having just over 600,000 subscribers at the beginning of 2016 to having such a massive blow-up during that year that by the end, he would have amassed over 4 million subscribers. At the time, these were record-breaking numbers. All eyes were on Leafy, and it was only a matter of time until his expected downfall would come.
But you gotta, draw the line somewhere. At this point, it's literally just bullying. And honestly, I want to thank Tommy for actually, making the statement and being like, hey, this is happening.
I want to bring your attention to this picture. This is a picture of Leafy at the little meetup, and there's no filter here. This is him in his natural environment.
YouTube in 2016 was pretty much a war zone, filled to the brim with controversy, and Leafy was no exception from this. From Mr. Black Darkness to Pyrocynical and Hatery, Calvin definitely had his fair share of YouTube dramas. One of the most notable situations being his run-in with Tommy NC, an autistic content creator who was reasonably upset by the video Leafy had made on him. This video mainly consisted of the usual Leafy insults and thinly veiled criticism, which is fine, but like I said earlier, Leafy would often go for low-hanging fruit, and at the beginning, that was fine. But when you are one of, if not the most prominent figure in the most rapidly growing YouTube genre at the time, punching down will only end badly, which is the exact reason Tommy is even being brought up. Leafy's fans went out of their way to send death threats and other forms of harassment to Tommy's channel. This would result in Ethan Klein, of all people, calling out Leafy for not having enough control over his fanbase and being irresponsible with his platform. And to be fair to Ethan, he wasn't completely in the wrong here. There is a creator responsibility to not create hate mobs, whether it is intentional or not. And I feel this was a necessary talking point in such a cutthroat community. This pushed Leafy to make an apology video and implement a disclaimer in his future videos, which was good enough to some, but for most was only the beginning of the end. In June of 2016, Leafyishere and Grade A Under A would release multiple videos on the gnome-faced rat that is Keemstar, causing one of the most self-destructive dramas of their time. This was in the height of Commentary's Uprising, and with Commentary titans Keem, Grade, and Leafy all involved in one big drama, it was destined for disaster. Leafy and Grade were, at least from Keemstar's perspective, on good terms with him, but because of some fucking contrived reason about someone being called a retard, they decided to turn on him, creating one of the biggest shit shows in YouTube drama history. Rant after rant and accusation after accusation, months go by and Leafy finally ends up going on the Baited podcast, confronting Keem in a supposedly controlled environment, which went as well as you can expect from Keemstar, Colossal, Leafy, and fucking Tommy C, not to be confused with the autistic guy from earlier.
You're going way off topic. Here's the deal.
How is that off topic? How is that fucking off topic?
You did
he
shitty
just
stuff
fucking
to me.
asked me that.
You
fucking,
did
oh my
shitty stuff
God.
to me. You did really shitty stuff to me.
This unsurprisingly ended with Leafy and Keem still hating each other, and Colossal and Tommy being completely perplexed by the events that had just taken place. Leafy's reputation was teetering on the edge of stability. All it would take is one person to dethrone the king.
What we do here is go back.
Wait, what was that? In September of 2016, the hate against Leafy was slowly but surely mounting up, and iDubbbz was the perfect person to bring all the criticism that was being directed towards him and put it into one neatly packaged and well-presented video. On the 13th of September 2016, content cop Leafyishere was released to the public, almost completely shifting the majority's opinion of Calvin and his content. It was seen by most as the driving force that killed Leafy's channel. Whether or not that is true is irrelevant due to the impact the video had on the community at the time. Ian was charismatic, entertaining, and beat Leafy at his own game of insults. He mocked Leafy and made him a laughingstock of the community. This didn't necessarily stunt growth for the once king of commentary, but had a big enough impact for most to know the end was near, and Leafy's time was running out. The damage from Ian's content cop was pretty much irreversible, but is usually dismissed as the main factor of Leafy's initial downfall. This is due to the actions of a certain Paul brother in a certain forest, and the mountain of scrutiny YouTube was under for the actions of its creators from journalists that had it in for the still somewhat fresh platform that definitely had the potential to take over from mainstream media. We all know the story of the adpocalypse and the damage it did to the platform. Because of this, Emperor Lemon would come up with the theory that Leafy was killed off by YouTube itself. The theory focuses on leaked emails that were supposedly from high-ups at YouTube. These emails contain the names of channels they saw as a threat to the platform and how to get rid of these quote-unquote harmful channels. Among others named, one stuck out in particular. Yes, that's right, the main protagonist of today's video, Leafyishere, was one of the channels named in these emails. Emp Lemon would go on to speculate that the feature that is now known as demonetization was secretly rolled out onto Leafy's channel in order to demotivate him, ultimately stunting his growth and inevitably ending his glory days as the king of commentary. If this theory is correct, it would answer for why Leafy stopped uploading entirely in late 2017 and show the cutthroat routes YouTube were willing to go down in order to remove toxicity from their platform. This is, at the end of the day, just a theory, but still something to consider nonetheless. Leafy being gone off the platform was at first overlooked, as most people had either stopped watching him or just didn't care by the time he'd left. It was time for the community to move on from the golden age and the more edgy style of content that was being created at the time. People went down many different routes. Pyro, among others, would head towards review-style content that would become his and many others' most praised work. And some doing the same as Leafy, switching to what is now known as topic commentary, a more news-based style of content where they would upload daily videos discussing trending topics. After a while though, people started to notice Leafy's absence, not just from YouTube, but from all other social media platforms. Some celebrated the fact he was gone, while others would look for answers as to why he left. But it was Keemstar who ended up finding out the reality of Leafy's whereabouts in an interview that was uploaded to the Drama Alert channel on the 25th of October 2018, nearly a year after he had disappeared off the platform. They would go on to discuss the reasons for his absence, which was mostly the changes YouTube were making at the time that would cripple creators like Leafy and almost force them into more family-friendly content, which didn't sit well with Calvin, inevitably contributing to his indefinite break from the platform. The interview ended, and that was the last we would ever hear from Leafy. Or was it? On On March 31st, 2020, Leafy premiered a video simply titled iDubbbz, which featured 30 seconds of him addressing his former critic. This was a surprising development to all current members of the commentary community and the people that had since lost interest in what seemed to be a dying genre. Leafy's comeback was timed perfectly, as it was directly in the middle of the mounting pressure against iDubbbz for a certain e-whore's actions, and was just before the infamous conflict of Ethan Klein and Keemstar. It genuinely felt like we had been taken back to 2016, and it sparked an interest in commentary again, not just from me, but from many others too. Just look at the amount of commentary channels created in 2020. Leafy's presence within the community was a huge deal for those who liked him and those who didn't. He was no longer punching down but fighting with the big guys, and was the driving force of the community from early to mid 2020. I don't think there will ever be a comeback as big as Leafy's. His presence really brought things back to the golden age of YouTube, but unsurprisingly, his triumph was short-lived. One of the most notable situations of 2020 and Leafy's short-lived comeback was the ongoing war between Twitch and YouTube. All in all, it was incredibly homosexual. It was basically an argument of who puts more effort into their content. And just who fucking cares at all. I understand that there can be conversations about this kind of thing, but it got to a point where each side wasn't adding anything constructive. It was just one massive ego-filled argument. The reason the issue was even a talking point was because of one segment in Leafy's Content Nuke Pokimane, where he pointed out how some of the content she was producing wasn't just lazy, but wasn't even transformative of the original content she was reacting to, which was and still is a good talking point that can and should be built upon. The issue is, streamers that were protecting their own had tunnel vision and saw it as an attack on a lot of the creators on Twitch, which in fairness, it was, but even then, the criticism was still valid, and due to the success of Leafy's first few videos on Pokimane, he decided to milk the topic for views and money, often not even discussing the situation in the videos, but just using Pokimane's face and name in the title and thumbnail to clickbait viewers. It got so bad that it was almost an inside joke with him and his audience, but his greed would be the final straw that YouTube needed to pull the plug entirely on his channel. Breaking the YouTube terms of service often leads to channel termination. Leafy wasn't the first to be affected by this, and he definitely won't be the last. Like the title of today's video implies, this move from YouTube was to be expected, and although it was an initial shock to most, it should not have been a surprise to the commentary community and Leafy's fans. Leafy broke TOS multiple times. In specific, the rules against targeted harassment, graphic content, and repetitive content. It was so obvious that he would eventually get terminated, but I don't think most were expecting it to be so soon. And while I do empathize with Leafy, as a former fan of his, I can't help but say it was justified. Not because I agree with his suspension, but because he repeatedly broke the rules that as creators, we are constantly reminded of. This isn't a case of YouTube abusing their rules, it's a case of YouTube's rules being conceptually abusive, and something that as content creators or viewers, we should take a stand against. But rules are rules, and as a creator that is making content on their website, you have to abide by them, whether you like it or not. I do understand the frustration from fans of his content, because I too was and still am frustrated with his termination, but you can't really blame YouTube for enforcing the rules they put in place. We live in a world where big tech companies have a say in what we can and can't do, and that is genuinely terrifying to most people, myself included. The monopoly is scary, and I wish we could do something about it. But as it currently stands, there doesn't seem to be much change on the way. After Leafy's termination, he headed to the place he had just relentlessly shit on prior to his suspension, Twitch.com. He streamed for approximately 22 days before he was, yet again, suspended for breaking TOS. The thing that most were quick to point out about his Twitch account being terminated was that it happened on September 11th of 2020, the same day that Pokimane would return from her hiatus following the drama between herself, the Twitch community, commentary YouTubers, and Leafy himself. This was at first quite suspicious, but it was later clarified that he had been terminated for, quote, engaging in hateful conduct and threats of violence against a person or group of people, which mostly explained the reason behind his ban. After all, he was blatantly saying the gamer word on stream. This left Leafy with Storyfire, Twitter, and Instagram, all of which aren't necessarily viable for content creation. The story of Leafy seemed to be coming to a close after people had yet again moved on. But then, out of nowhere, on December 23rd, 2020, Keemstar posted to Twitter that Leafy was quote-unquote hired by a company called Red Bloom to be a host and make YouTube videos for their company, and that he was planning on making a video about Pyrocynical and the allegations of him grooming a minor. This was good news to many. It was a light in the dark when commentary seemed to be on its last legs. But after all, we are dealing with a corporate company owned by Google, and it was yet again no surprise that Leafy's new channel, cleverly named Leafy, was terminated for ban evasion. This was the end for Leafy. He was backed into a corner, and there wasn't much more he could do. Over time, you would slowly see him tweeting less and less. It was clear that he had run out of options. And then, for one final punch to the gut, after a merciless beating from the corporate companies that run the online world, his Twitter was suspended for yet again violating their rules/terms of service. It was, like every other time, to be expected. He wasn't family friendly, or scared to express his thoughts and feelings on subjects that most would steer away from. He did say edgy stuff that could often border on what was even considered satire, and he deserves praise for not conforming to the internet monopoly. But at the same time, has to take the blame for his actions, whether you agree with the rules or not. He fought for his platform, but was too reckless to keep what he had built over the space of 9 years. I think it's safe to say that Leafy probably won't be back on mainstream social media anytime soon, if ever. It is sad to see some of the most important history on YouTube to be eradicated with the push of a button, but you can't necessarily blame the high-ups of YouTube for getting rid of Leafy. After all, they've had a hate boner for him and his content since early 2017, and supposedly went as far to kill off his channel through demonetization back then. I don't think it's a stretch to believe that the hate they had for him and his content back then still applied when he came back in 2020. He gave them what they wanted, a reason to terminate him and kill edgy/critical content in the process. YouTube has done this before and will do it again. The internet isn't the way it once was and will probably never go back to the golden age. So at the end of the day, was it really a surprise that Leafy was terminated? Before I end the video, I just want to say a huge thanks to my Patreon supporters, Dutchyverse and Beptile. It genuinely makes my day and means so much to me that people care enough about my content to support it through giving me money when I barely even upload. Speaking of, I'm very sorry it's been so long. I've just been very demotivated. So I do also want to thank Jaco for supporting me and motivating me to get back to making videos. His link will be in the description. Anyways, I do really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you feel like liking and subscribing, that would be very appreciated. And I will see you guys very soon.
Got me in this party all up in the zone. Hottest Betty's trying to take away my cell phone. Like, come and party, I've been trying to shake you off my mind, but just can't get you off me. Keep it moving, they ain't worth it, yeah, that's what my father taught me. But for now I'm going through the motions of letting go, cause my mind's telling me yes, but my heart really don't know. Your heart went dark out of nowhere, yet I still see a glow. So we had that